Good evening, everyone. My name is Raymond Pinto, and I'll be your host for tonight and today evening. Sorry, and I would like to thank each and every one of you on behalf of FinancialExpress.com, our esteemed guests present with us today, and for joining us at the Financial Express Telecom Leadership Dialogue, powered by IBM. AI as a technology is making a difference in every industry and business. So telecom is certainly no different. Telcos across the globe are embracing and appreciating AI and AI focused mindset. Today's forum aims to address the opportunities and challenges around adoption of intelligent automation, thus bringing together the best of minds in the telecom industry, the business of telcos. Without further ado, let me invite Mr. Roshun Povaiah, editor financialexpress.com, to welcome the esteemed gathering here at this event.
Good evening, everyone. Um I think we've come a long way when it comes to telecom. I think I've been fortunate enough to have grown up in an era where I was in boarding school, and to make a phone call those days was an event. Uh, every Sunday, I remember waiting. There was this one phone in the school, and we would wait near the phone, and my parents would book a trunk call, and then it would get connected sometime in the day. 4 hours was an urgent call. Lightning call was, I think, within an hour they would connect you, and if it was a normal call, it would happen anytime 8 to 10 hours later. From there, when cell phones came about, I think that's when a little more intelligent telephony began to come about. And I think I remember the first part of it was when we had value added services, uh, cricket score or stock prices, all that on feature phones. That was the first step. Then we went to IVR. Press 1 for this, press 2 for that, press 3 for something else. And as the telecom industry has progressed, today we are at um, an instance where we are talking about AI in telecom, and it's come to such an extent that whether it's any app, I look for customer service. I really don't know whether I'm speaking to a human or I'm speaking to a bot. It's become so good now and so seamless that I think there are huge opportunities still to be tapped, of course, on the consumer side as well as on the business to business side as well, where all of you all in the room are implementing different aspects of AI in your networks. And so when we talk about AI powered chatbots become increasingly popular among telecom companies in India, um, chatbots, of course, are now using NLP or natural language processing to interpret queries. So, and also not just in English. I mean, now it's across different vernacular platforms as well. Um, Also, I guess everybody's using AI now to optimize your network performance, figuring out when there's going to be network congestion in a certain area, where there's an event happening, increasing the load, and AI is being used to monitor that data in real time, and optimize the network. Another area where AI is being used is in customer experience management. You identify patterns and trends. For example, if a customer is using a certain feature uh, multiple times, a telco can proactively offer them a discounted plan on that feature, or even tailor their billing plans according to their usage, pattern. And we have Airtel, Geo in the room, and there are multiple. I mean, I'm also a customer of both platforms, and I've seen multiple use cases where I get alerts from the telecom operators for certain plans which actually do cater to my needs. Right. Another area where AI is being used is, I think, in cybersecurity. AI powered cybersecurity solutions are used to monitor your network traffic, detect prevent cyber attacks in real time. And I think that's something that is increasingly becoming a problem area as well, which I'm sure all of you all are discussing and figuring out ways to use AI to tackle these various scams that are coming up, fraud, etc. So we'll talk about that also when we have our discussion a little later in the day. Um, yeah, so just to sum up, I think when it comes to AI and telecom, there are so many opportunities that we have. And the reason we are gathered here today for this telecom leadership dialogue is to understand from each of you where you stand in your AI journey today, how you are deploying it in your networks, and perhaps with some case studies. I think this panel will kind of bring up some intelligent solutions or ideas which will help the whole industry move forward. With that, it's back to Raymond. Thank you. I welcome you all to this Telecom Leadership Dialogue.
Thank you, Roshan. I would like to now invite Mr. Harish Pani, Managing Client Partner, Telecom India and South Asia, IBM Consulting, to share his thoughts on a rather important subject, communication beyond connectivity. Harish, please, you're welcome.
I mean, when you have people like Shyam, Sudhir, Shailesh, Nilesh, Raghuram, and Utkarsh, and all of them, you feel like a schoolboy, right? Trying to kind of explain what we have seen. However, this is more from a technology implementation perspective, various aspects we have seen over the last couple of decades in terms of the telecom experience and what we kind of see now. So I think we all feel that you're at a reflection in terms of an inflection, and that's what I wanted to do. And when we say inflection point, this is in terms of the market dynamics on one side. So you kind of see whether it is the fact that even though we might have brought in 5G, but not necessarily the ARPU will increase. You have the regulation and compliance, which obviously getting stricter in terms of the security that, let's say, just now what Roshan said, really being demanded, and in terms of the technology that is really exponentially posing various opportunities. And when you put these three together, and as he said, is it really a chatbot or a human? We are moving from a world of processes run by humans supported by technology to technology assisted by humans. All the processes are run by that, right? And we are slowly moving. Obviously, it's not that everything has moved in, but that's what we are trying to move into. Now, if you look at, this was a study done on various aspects. This is a IBV study, right? And some of the data is from the McKinsey study as well. So I don't want to go through all the points, but if you look at, for example, the data explosion, all of us know, and there are various numbers, right, out there, depending on when the slice has been taken. We all know that the data volumes per device has grown by more than 6x, right? And this is posing opportunities of what you will do with it, right? And many of, I don't want to call just a communication service provider, but even the digital transformation companies, however you look at it, many of the companies are looking on how to leverage these opportunities, right? What you can do with it. So there are various aspects, whether it is the latency and many things that are changing, right? Which are exploding. For example, the device evolution. In fact, some of the device ecosystem is still probably catching up with what 5G has brought in. I mean, in fact, that is what is really catching up quickly. So many of these things, as they explode, will give, omnipresent kind of a aspect, which is what we are calling as connectivity. So wherever you go, you expect connectivity, right? And in fact, you see a lot of wellness kind of situations created where you don't have connectivity so that you have a break. But otherwise, wherever you go for any task, you expect connectivity to be a default. Now, in terms of what we see when we look at providers across the world, which is AT&T or Verizon and so on, and obviously in the Indian market, which is really now matured and leapfrogging in a huge way, right? so that we no longer need to have probably a reference to the West. But the point is that using or usage of AI, whether it is as some of the use cases that Roshan alluded, but if you look at acquisition journey, whether you look at a customer experience journey, whether you look at a fraud management journey, so any area that you want to look at, right, you will find proof of concepts, use cases for AI that brings in a very varied experience as an outcome. And this is really coming up, and we see uh, uh, POCs that are being done, proof of concept. We see certain things really going live in a big way in each of these areas, right? And it is not just no longer now just the telecom sector, because now telecom is virtually across all the industries, right? With the fact that you're looking at how a connectivity brings in a difference in the manufacturing, whether it is retail, supply chain, various companies. Now, in terms of what you see as outcome based, right? When we look at, people are looking at outcome based model, which means if I use AI in a specific journey, then how do I get an outcome which reduces a customer call duration by X percentage? If you take that as a use case example, then you're just not, you're moving from just chatbots to a much more refined and a matured version of how a AI ML user understanding what are the campaigns, what is it that when a customer is calling, what are probably the issues that he is going to raise. You have models that are looking at a customer data record, a call data record being analyzed to give the call center agent information while the customer is calling. What are the potential next best things that the customer will ask, and hence what's the next best decision, right? So those are things that are already being built, and you can see where we'll go from here. When we looked at some of the Fortune 500, right, what this kind of told us was most of the people, and when they talk of automation, it's no longer just the basic automation, right? It is automation that is infused with AI, which is infused with models, which are infused with patterns, and hence there are outcomes that needs to be derived out of it. And across industries, whether you look at retailers, whether you look at defense companies, across industries, people are looking at infusing this. And this is, while we are talking of the Fortune 500 here, we see a very similar profile when you look at the Indian market as well, where a lot of companies across sectors are looking how to infuse this. Once we have looked at some of these, now if we look at a slightly different dimension, and when I say a different dimension, it is a dimension of the fact that how is this data explosion being created? All of us are aware of IoT, we are aware of 5G use cases. Many of us have seen the fact that across devices, right from, the edge solutions as we call it, and how there are use cases which are moving from Wi-Fi 4G to a real latency required 5G solution, and how all of this is creating a volume of data that is kind of bludgeoning, and you really need to see how you can derive some intelligence out of it. And in this, what we see as most of the people focusing on, I mean, we could have spoken much more, but really restricting from AI automation concept of four specific areas that we thought we look at. One is the fact as in terms of the customer experience. And we said whether it is an acquisition, whether it is tomorrow a campaign that you want to do, whether it is a call center, any of these experiences, we see that there's a kind of a trustworthy AI solution that people are looking to implement, and there are models that people have looked at. Some people are curating it, some people are incubating it to a more matured level, so on and so forth. The other one is the fact that for specifically the telecom sector, the network operations and how can it not just be a semi-automated, but virtually a zero touch in terms of provisioning, for example? How can it really happen on the fly in a more intelligent way? And there are already models that are being implemented to work through that. I mean, I'm sure all of you have looked at it, and many of this is in play. Cyber security, like how Roshun said, is one of the fact that it's not just about having AI in cyber security. What is happening is there are examples of where people are using automation models to hack, which means how would you have a much more refined model in order to prevent that? And that is what the whole learning and automation is all about, that. And finally, the complete enterprise connectivity. So there are obviously more plays, but these are four important segments from an automation and AI perspective that most of the operators and the transformation companies are working through. And there are models that really help making this much more mature and in a refined way, right? So that has been some of our experience. I'm sure as we go through the panel discussion, much more of this will bubble up, and we'll be happy to understand that. Thank you.
Thank you, Harish, for the insightful session. Now I welcome the person who is a thought leader in and a technology expert. We have amongst us Mr. Shyam Prabhakar Mardikar, President and Group CTO, Mobility at Geo. He has held many key roles in with various players in the Indian telecom industry and is now responsible for expanding the reach of Geo network. I welcome Mr. Shyam to share his thoughts at this with all of us.
So disclaimer one, almost all the visuals you see are from AI. So I went to not AI, open AI, but various open URLs which generate AI. So I thought, let me actually walk the talk a bit. So before we talk of AI, let's get some AI on board. So most of these are, you just prompt something and look at the beauty that shows up. So I think it would have taken us weeks and months with the right kind of artists and experts to kind of draw this, but you just write a few phrases and this is how it comes. What I'm going to tell you in next 10-15 minutes is nothing that you not know, but what I want is to put a context so that we can, when we talk together, we understand it from a telecom perspective and how it is actually using the AI capability, how it's supposed to use go forward, and what are the big ticket items. But before that, I just want to step in the past for 30 seconds because this is my favorite India story. I call it the story of 3 V's. And at the break of the century, we were at telecom, we measure the penetration of telecom usage in a term called tele-density, which is number of telephones per 100 population. And most of the developed countries in 2000, after Y2K problem, Shailesh, were sitting at 70-80% kind of tele-density. India was a piddly 2%, 2.5%. And that 2.5% was more or less 2% from fixed line and 0.5% from mobile. That was the depth of penetration. But then something magical happened. We actually connected the country in 1 decade, end to end. Our actually tele-density when we ended the decade was around 80%. We were able to connect 800 million customers, citizens out of 1.2 billion. India was 1.2 billion then, I believe. Now we've added 200 more million. So good number one position to have. But that's it. I mean, 1 decade and from 2% to 80%. Almost everybody whom we could connect, villages, towns were connected. Only difference was this connection was predominantly was for voice. It was only for voice. We had not, as a country, we had not seen smartphones. As a country, we had not seen data. GPRS and Edge, and we were talking, Raymond, we were talking about those modems, 9.6 kbps, and the negotiating sound you recall, which was there, and you see the picture coming up. You actually go out, take your cup of tea, and then that picture was there. That's that. So that was this decade, but connectivity was there. But what made it right was the wires, and we connected. Voice was the first V. 2010, the famous 3G and 4G auctions happened, and iPhone, which came worldwide in 2008, and smartphones somewhere around that time, actually started percolating in our country, and we actually saw smartphones coming in, data coming in, and 11 to 20 was the decade of video. And we have actually beaten every country in the globe hands down when in this decade. If you look at the video consumption which we did, and at the turn of the century, this decade, 2020, if I have my numbers right, an average Indian was consuming almost 1 GB a day. And the same average Indian in 2015 was consuming 150 MB a month. So from 5 MB a day, so 170x consumption per capita consumption. That is the gradient which actually it, and 78-79% of this was video. So the second V is the decade of video. And we all know, I mean, we could not have survived COVID if this connectivity was not there. If you look at collaboration, the teams, the updates, the work from home, the schooling, the commerce, the ordering, almost everything was on this backbone. And the other good thing happened is the speeds moved 1000x. So from kbps speeds we moved to mbps speeds. And just at the turn of decade when we have launched 5G, the speeds have moved 1000x more. We are now gbps. So 100k is an M, and 1000k is an M, and 1000 M is a G. So every 10 years we are moving 1000 times faster. And this famous, so I actually attribute it to what I call as three wise men. Moore's law, everybody knows Moore's. I mean, we've got server guys here and compute guys here. Moore said that the processing power doubles every year. Now, doubling every year over a period of 10 years is 2 to the power 10, which is exactly 1024. The other guy called Gilder said the bandwidth in the universe doubles every year. Actual statement was 13 months, 14 months. I am kind of simplifying it for the group. But again, the same story. So if bandwidth doubles every year, again in 10 years, 2 to the power 10,000. This is bandwidth doubling every year, decade by decade. Third was Kreider. Storage, cost and space, Raghu, you'll relate to it, is halved every year. Which means the storage which I had in 2011, at the same cost and space, I can have 1000x more storage today in 2021. So that's 1000 times more storage, 1000 times more bandwidth, and 1000 times more compute. It is beyond billion kind of number. So I think that's what is the fundamental technology vectors that are burgeoning. And if you look at this and you look at the next decade, which we are talking about, actually it's the decade of digital. I actually use virtuality to rhyme it with V's, but this is decade of digital. Everything which is going to happen from health to education, to entertainment, to travel, to commerce, to business is going to happen on the screens. And if you look at the demand side of it, so phones, actually first thing I did when I walked out of here is picked up my 2 phones. Phones are now an integral part of human anatomy. If I had left it there, I would have started withdrawal symptoms. First thing we do when we open our eyes in the morning, we look at the phone. Last thing we do when we close our eyes before sleeping, we look at the phone. That's the kind of dependence this device has on us. So it's actually a part of anatomy. The second part is the digital natives. And we are all, I call us, who have been there before the turn of the century as digital immigrants. But the Gen Z which is there today, they are actually totally native to digital. Everything they do, everything they see has to be a screen. I have seen young kids, if you give them a book, they try to blow up the book as if it's a screen. And this is happening too much. All vectors, work, play, entertainment, and we wonder why these kids are not talking to each other. But they are actually chatting to each other 100 times more than we could have ever done in our childhood. That's the strength of digital. But everything is a screen for them. And third, and Harish did allude to it, hyper digital. I think I read it somewhere that one of our leaders actually made this big statement, survival of the digital. I think it is so apt. I think unless you are digital, you are out of the race, you are out of the existence. And if we link this to 5G, we link this to what is going forward, and then finally to the topic of the day, AI, where are we going? I want to start with 5G because that's the newest kid on the block and fundamental differentiator, if I may, from a telecom perspective, which is changing the game. For the first time, it is beyond connectivity. So till 4G, the mantra was that next generation will be better connected generation. 3G will be better than 4G, 2G will be worse than 3G, because I have more spectrum, I can connect more. But for the first time, 5G says, I will not only be better connected, I will give you compute and storage on the pipe itself. So the holy trinity of communication, which I call the hyperconnectivity, the hypercompute, and the hyper storage, all of the three are together on 5G. And imagine now extending a physical wire, which is not just the wire, but it has its own capability to compute. It has a microprocessor built in, it has a storage built in. So the network now becomes liquid. It actually can flow through you, pick up your thoughts, your capabilities, your requirements, and send it back. You don't need to have a discrete physical network running. It's like a computer actually reaching out to you. That's how 5G is kind of created. And what it gives us, the biggest advantage it gives us is about programmability. And this is the fundamental building block where AI sits, or where capability of analytics sits, or where our understanding of hypercompute and storage sits. Because the moment you make your network programmable, what do? You pick up gazillions of data points and process them, compute them in a way that make the network more efficient, that make the service more efficient, more optimal, more cost effective. I mean, you name the 9 yards there. And how do you go ahead and do that? You actually distribute the intelligence. Now, for the first time, you do not have one island of intelligence. And I'll talk about the one of the biggest island of intelligence, the devices which we own, in a while. But you look at what is happening. You have the network which has its own set of data. You have the application, what is a YouTube doing, or what is a Facebook doing for that matter. And then you have devices. Each one of these three independent islands of intelligence are actually pumping and giving you insights, events, and incidents of their own in billions and trillions, which are telling you the pulse of the network, the pulse of the service, the pulse of the experience, right up to the last customer, and extracted up to the full network. How is Mumbai doing, or how is Dr. Shailesh doing? I mean, you can actually telescopically, seamlessly go through it. And if you use that data in the right manner, and that is where this classical, conventional merger of domain and data comes together. And this is the sweetest spot which we as an industry have to cross, one bridge, and I think we are fully digital. So what is happening is, we have a set of data scientists sitting on one side, and we have a set of domain experts sitting on the other side. And this could be any, this need not be telecom. You're talking about agriculture, you're talking about education. They know what to do, and they know how to do it. How do we actually cross-pollinate this together, saying that yes, I don't understand data structures and data engineering, and I don't understand what the domain guy does. How is a car getting manufactured, or how is a telecom tower getting erected? And if we can actually pollinate this, and I think this is getting seeded as I speak across our organization, I can see, because we're doing this very, very cautiously and very, very purposefully. But I believe in this decade, this is also going to happen. And in times to come, I think it will be a very, very sweet merger between domain and digital, which will make it digital native, true to its word. And you're talking about capabilities and intelligence. This is the latest iPhone. And I actually looked at what NASA had in Houston when they launched a man on the moon, sent a man on the moon. Look at the numbers. Look at the size of the memory they have. Look at the size of the processing they have. We have, billion is smaller. I think it's a billion times more memory. It's a billion times more storage. And more importantly, a billion times more processing power. So each one of us now is holding the power of more than 1 billion NASA space stations in our pockets. And we use it to play Candy Crush or whatever we do. But those guys use it to send a man on the moon and get it back with 1 billion less power. And how do you get there? So this democratization or commoditizing of technology has actually led us to this event. And when you get there, there are 2-3 very, very clear writings on the wall. How are you going to scale? The only way to scale is to understand where the consumption is, to understand where the customer is. Some numbers, in fact, last week we at Jio actually celebrated our 400,000th 5G cell already. We are just 6 months into the building of this network. And we have been able to create a network which is already now running at almost equal to top 10 operators across the globe with first 5-6 months. So more than 400,000 cells, more than 2,300 towns and running, and the big part is 90% is on fiber. How did all this happen? See, it's about planning and execution, but this planning is based on very, very solid evidence of what data is telling us, where the customer is, where the consumption is. And it is making us so easy to go ahead and roll out, because it's not only about radio planning or a network planning, it is about customer experience planning. And this new bandwagon around understanding where the market is, going where the market is, could not have happened unless we could have understood this data well, used that data well, churned that data well. 400 billion, and Raghu likes to quote this number, 400 billion network events is what we capture every day. And out of that 400 billion, we actually take insights to act on what to do well, what to do better, what to fix, what is not working well, and go ahead and fix it. And the other part is, how do you then communicate this to customer experience? How do you actually deep dive and say, look at point number 1 here, flavors of consumption. Are you a voice-centric customer, or you are doing a voice-centric application? You're making a call, you're running a video game, you're watching IPL, whichever it is. We want the network to understand and adapt itself. And that is the distributed compute. That is the distributed intelligence which is coming right to the edge. And again, Harish spoke about distributed edge. But what is distributed edge in reality? That the network knows that this is the stadium, this is the flavor of consumption happening in the stadium, and this is the way I need to serve. This is a boardroom, there is a different set of people with a different set of consumption. You don't need to hard code it. It reprograms itself to service that. And if it does that, then it actually extracts the kind of capability. And here is where the domain collaboration, you're talking about urban centers, you're talking about rural centers, you're talking about manufacturing units, again, AI generated images. 4 words in a prompt box, and out comes these images. And I couldn't have Googled them. I've been doing Google for a while now. We've all been doing. But look at the brilliance of this. So, working at scale, understanding the data at its right earnest, correlating that data with the right set of domain expertise, taking out insights out of that correlation, and then finally running it as a call to action. That is the whole 9 yards. That is where the journey comes. And it does not actually end here. If you look at the do's and don'ts, and I think this we have been talking about for a while, almost for everything, but this is becoming much more kind of blatant and brutal to us. You have to shed the old baggage, because there is so much different and there is so much new way of working which is hitting us. You're talking about workflows, you're talking about workforce management, you're talking about planning and engineering, you're talking about projects, execution plan. I think there are absolutely no holy cows now in this decade. And if you want to make this decade of digital, the only way is to start questioning every way of working, every ritual which you have been doing hitherto. Otherwise, it will be very, very, you can't have the cake and eat it too, as they say. And it would be very difficult to do that. Second more important thing is the green. And I think as conscious citizens. And again, all of this, why I am highlighting this is, there is data enough and intelligence enough and insights enough in our system to kind of use that to drive to these noble causes. And if we are environmental friendly, if we are planet sensitive, there is no way in the world we can avoid this. And if we do this right, with the right kind of data, all scale, 100 times more capacity, but 100 times less power. That could be the mantra. How can I deliver 100 times more experience and capacity to the customer with spending 100 times less power, so that I am much more green compliant than anything else? And the last and most important again is the security. Security is now native. We are talking about data security, we are talking about parental control, we are talking about hacking and denial of service, we are talking about penetration threats and such like things. How do you make sure that security is now not sitting outside? And again, one of the 4 things, if I need to add on compute, storage and connectivity, is the security part. Unless security is at this scale native to the system, it will be impossible to create a digital footprint so big. It will be impossible to create a digital footprint so secure going forward. So the network becomes programmable. The network becomes more intuitive, more flexible. The network becomes compute ready and storage ready. And then unleash the power of data and digital on top of it and use it. So all of us are Star Wars friend, and The code changes from may the force be with you to may the source be with you now. That's how it goes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Shyam, for your insights that you shared. I'm sure everyone would be amazed at the depiction that he has shown upon it, and I'm sure a lot of learnings can be drawn. Our next session is a panel discussion of the best of these minds on AI in telecom, bringing the change. Uh, I would like to introduce the esteemed panel for this. We have with us Shailesh Kumar, Chief Data Scientist, Reliance Jio. Nilesh Mahajan, Vice President, Geo Platforms Limited. Mr. Raghuram Velega, Vice President, Head Big Data and Analytics, Reliance Jio. Dr. Sudhir Kumar Mittal, Chief Architect, Bharti Airtel Limited. Utkarsh Dubey, Chief Technology Officer, Bharti Airtel Limited. Jignesh Karya, Distinguished Engineer and Master Inventor, India and South Asia, IBM. Amit Alawadi, Chief Client Partner, Communication Sector, India and South Asia, IBM Consulting. I'd like to invite, we have two moderators for this session to pick your brains on. That's Roshun and Sumana Sarkar, who is the Bureau Chief for FinancialExpress.com. All over to you, Roshun.
Thanks, Raymond. I think we've already seen a very insightful presentation from Mr. Shyam, and I think there's so many ideas already floating in the room. But I think just to start with, I'd like to hear from Dr. Sudhir Mittal as well. One of the things we've been talking about is 5G. How are you using 5G, and what are the opportunities you see with the adoption of 5G in India with your network?
This is what I was discussing just outside before this session also. 5G is providing a brilliant opportunity to the country, and the way our data consumption over the years have exploded, 5G is providing a whole new set of opportunities. But at the same time, if we see in next coming time, in short term, I see that 5G is perhaps more suited for the enterprise segment in the B2B area, wherein we have a lot of use cases and companies are all equipped to leverage on the 5G. And there could be certain use cases in terms of using private 5G for the manufacturing part, or using edge, or the gaming companies, or any such kind of applications. So what I feel is that in the B2B segment, as it gets proliferated, the B2C adoption is going to be in parallel. It's definitely today providing a lot of use cases in EMBB, which is enhanced mobile broadband, and providing a lot of bandwidth in the hand of the end customer. But the real things are coming up for B2B segment, and IoT is again one of those use cases. So that's how. But on the AI side, I think there is a huge opportunity in terms of how do we address the customer, what kind of experience do we get, and how do we do our network optimization, how do we utilize our network to provide the best experience, and using self-organizing network. So these are the opportunities in front of us.
Okay. Raghuram, I'd like to take this question to you as well. There's so much of data that we're dealing with now with 5G, and almost every other device now being an IoT and getting onto the data network. Where do you see AI coming in here to play a role?
Yes, there is a lot of data. But the problem is, how do you really take out those nuggets from the data which are really useful for the enterprise? So at the onset, you might feel that there is billions of records coming in. But the really useful nuggets of that billions of records is a few thousand. So what we feel, and that's what we've been working, and Shyamji has very clearly articulated in his presentation, very well done Shyamji on that. And how do you take out those nuggets from this large data, working very closely with the experts who understand those nuggets? So that's been what our focus is. So even there, when you look at it, right, see IPL is going on, right? Today we just broke a record. When we started the first day, we were able to ingest around 10 million records a second, which was unheard of thanks to IPL. But it's not important that we got in 10 million records a second. It's important that out of the 10 million records, how much intelligence I have taken out in a very systematic and a very simplistic way and presented in a singular view for the customer. So he can look at that and say, अच्छा यहाँ problem है, मुझे ये देखना है. That's what we look at. If you do that, see, data is the driver. Then comes the AI on top of that. Once you get the data in, you mine it, you bring it down to small data, and then you use the big data and the small data and create intelligence and start solving the problems what you're seeing most of the time. Which we call, you first measure, then you basically act, and then you basically proact and make it a problem.
Okay. I'm just going to keep alternating the questions. Maybe I'll take this to Utkarsh also. You can just give your point on this.
So, thank you, Shyam sir. You explained everything. Whatever questions are coming, it was already covered in the part of presentation. So, 5G is a key driver. We were talking about 4G data speeds. Everybody is around. I'll give you some real-time examples. We were talking about IPL, right? On 5G, you can imagine going from location A to location B without buffering entire city, entire area. You do a Zoom call in the car, you sit any place you want to. So this is the change 5G has brought. 5G has reduced the time to connect. 5G is bringing the latency out of question. 5G is something which will change our lives forever. Not just B2B, it is actually going to impact much on B2C also. We are waiting for the application, but with the AI piece, everything will get sorted. When we talk about AI layer over the traditional network, be it 4G or on the 5G, AI is something who is going to resolve our overall time to improve the customer experience, overall time reduction to give more proper services, like Roshun was initially talking about that initial days it was taking a lot of time to connect, then it was connectivity which got improved, and now it is like I need experience. And experience is something I can now correlate and understand by the AI layer what the customer wants. Where is he? So we have got self-optimizing networks wherein I can see where the capacity is there. Is there a function and a large gathering happening? I need to provide interlayer capacities, or there is something which requires more data speeds, and I can switch over the layers. Operations, to my say, it has improved a lot via our tools which we are developing in house. We had traditionally been working on millions of data pointers from OSS reports. Now we have gone away with that, gone away with the cell-wise working. We have now started drilling in that data in real time, and that has happened because of AI. Now we know where the temperature of the site is high, where the cell is not working properly, where the cell is sleeping, and this is what is happening. And this is happening today. So we are not waiting for tomorrow, and this will progress further.
Interesting. That's an interesting use case. I'd like to take this question to Gio as well. Nilesh, if you want.
Yeah, so first of all, Shyam sir, it was really amazing. All of us were, so you kept everything, a very complex subject into a really simple perspective. So thank you very much for that. So when it comes to AI, in my mind, AI is about automation and learnability both. So all of us have made our career automating different things, right? When we started, probably many processes were done manually, and we said let's automate those. Right now we are coming from automation to processes that are already automated and adaptable to situations, adaptable to customer problems, and eventually they keep on learning and become autonomous. Right, that is the ultimate aim, wherein as we heard that it would be process run by technology and people would be assisting it. So eventually it will become an autonomous, like an autonomous car, and a driver person will just sit in case of emergency. So the beauty is the learning kind of compounds. The system keeps on learning itself, as against a human being. A human being works, learns something, and eventually, if there is an attrition, he leaves. Then he leaves that learning, takes that learning with him. Even if there is documentation, it cannot help. So automation helps in kind of compounding the learning again and again, and makes the system really, really intelligent. As it is said, in 150 years, whatever was invented, we are going to reinvent again in next 15 years using AI, right? So that is the kind of transformation that is going to happen, and 5G, I'm sure, with the speeds and connectivity and low latency, is going to aid in it.
Okay. Staying with that, I mean, let's talk about customer experience also. I would like to, bring in Shailesh here. When you talk about automation and AI, what kind of role does it play in giving a customer an omni-channel kind of experience? So
Yeah. So let me start with my first day at Reliance. 5 years ago, I joined there. I joined from Ola, and at Ola we were working on how do we meet demand by creating supply. And when I went to Reliance, the first quote I read on the wall by our founder chairman was that he said, "Supply creates demand." And it took me a month to figure that out. And now you can see, right? Supply creates demand. And when you create supply, demand gets created, right? That's the nature of human consumption. So I think, we've been on this journey, so I talked about it. I think the era that we have entered now is an era of complexity. If you look at any system, whether it's telecom, retail, healthcare, agriculture, we are now in the era of complexity. Compare that to Google search, which is a very simple 2 API system. You do a query, you get a search result. You do a query, you get a ads. That's it. But now we are in an era of complexity. What does that mean? You have hundreds of thousands of towers to deal with. You have so billions of devices, so many customers, so many locations, so many buildings, so many fibers. How do you deal with all that complexity as a single whole? And that is the new challenge. So I think adding to, we moved from automation to intelligence to integration.
Mm-hmm.
Integration is the new innovation, as our chairman says, because how do we integrate, for example, a smart city is an integrated ecosystem. A telecom network is an integrated ecosystem, but we don't have an operating system to build something as complex as that. So one of the things we want to do is to make sure that we understand the effect of the network on the customer and the effect of the customer on the network in a very seamless way, right? And breaking it into OSS, BSS, customer side, network side creates a silo, right? Because it's like a road network. More people are on the road networks get affected. The more the road network is affected, the customer experience gets affected. So I think that is one thing that we need to understand, the synergy between, or the symbiosis between how people use a complex system and how they experience the complex system, right? Now, one of the things we talked about is in the world of customer care, for example, is what our chairman says: why should a customer have to call you if you already know that he has a problem, right? If we have all the sensors inbuilt, we know that this guy gets a call drop rate very high when he is at home in the evening. We already know that, right? Why should he have to tell me that? So that itself is a problem. And I think we are going to move away from reactive AI or reactive decision making to proactive decision making, proactive customer care, self-care, and all of that. So we should be able to monitor experience and continuously improve experience, everywhere, all the time, across devices, across activities. That is going to be a big area. Now, we also talk about, building a highway is not enough. Running the cars on it is also important, right? So these are the value-added services. So now we are not looking at the silo of telecom as a separate thing and the silo of agriculture, healthcare, education as a separate thing. They're all integrated. Because we have communication, we can do so much more. It opens a whole set of possibilities. So now, in terms of customer experience, we are building capabilities like, per farmer, every day can you give a personalized advice
Right.
instead of watching a Krishi Darshan program, which is general, right? So how do you go from broadcast to personalized at scale? That's a new promise. How do you go from broadcast to personalized at scale? Can we do the same thing in education? Why should all children learn the same thing at the same pace, right? Can we make healthcare personalized? So the idea of really now, because of telecom, we are now going to be able to unleash the power of AI. Customer experience as living a digital life is going to be transformed because now we have connectivity. And I think the next 20 years of AI will be far more amazing than the last 20 years. That's what is the excitement is all about.
Right. And in fact, I would like to get the perspective of the technology people in the room. We have IBM here. So, how do you see this, the role of AI in enhancing the customer experience?
Let me take 5G as, because everybody's talking about 5G and edge, right? So with 5G and AI, I think AI is, along with 5G, is going to speed up the evolution of a real connected and an intelligent world, right? What I mean by that is that 5G is primarily bringing high speed. It is going to give you low latency. It is also allowing you to exchange a lot of data in a shorter time frame. But what are you going to do with that data? Raghuram mentioned about IPL churning around 10 million records in a day or something, right? In a second, right? Now 10 million records. Imagine you have 10 million records in a second to be analyzed by a human. How many people you will require? That's where the force of AI comes into picture, right? Look at an example in real life, right? If I were to drive a car, and if someone comes across the road, and if I have to apply a brake, it takes 20 to 40 milliseconds for my brain to interpret and apply that brake, right? Now, if I were to design an autonomous car on a 3G or a 4G world, it will not apply. It has to be an edge solution with AI mounted on 5G, which will enable me to apply brakes in an autonomous vehicle, right? So that's the power that we are talking about. If I were to apply AI in an industrial world, Dr. Sudhir talked about enterprises picking up 5G and edge, right? So where you have what you call quality inspection going on the fly, wherein a product is coming on a conveyor belt and you are doing some quality inspection on the fly, right? Now that's for a human eye who is taking that decision at real time. Can I apply AI on edge on 5G world, which can take the image of that particular product which is coming on the conveyor belt and immediately taking a real-time decision, right? Now that is possible via 5G. These are the use cases that we are talking about. We are also talking about use cases wherein we can do preventive maintenance. We spoke about preventive operations and maybe experience related aspects that we can enhance as we move along with 5G. So that's what is the world of 5G and edge along with AI, which is going to bring. I think AI is going to harness the true potential of 5G. That's what I would say.
Okay. To come back to Dr. Mittal, he's talking about AI enhancing, the true potential of 5G. How would you say in your network, how does AI help in enhancing the network coverage, optimizing network? How are you deploying it right now? If you could give us some use cases.
So I'll be talking about a few of the initiatives which have been taken up. Also, a lot of potentials.
Yeah.
So in telecom, you see, typical telecom industry is having its unique characteristics in terms of very huge volume, large scale, and it's an essential service, regulated service, and customer is like with number portability, you don't know he's going to be staying there or he's going to be really moving out, and so on. And then it's capital intensive and everything is real time. So we have a lot of challenge in terms of whether we talk about growth or we talk about experience or we talk about reducing customer churn or we talk about optimization. So use cases are spread across all. So that's the opportunity. That's the spectrum of the opportunity. And what we are talking about is intelligence at scale. we are not talking about one or two use cases. We see growth, experience, churn reduction, optimization everywhere, hundreds of use cases. So let's take a few. So for example, I interact with my customer every day. I should first of all know my customer. We've seen that in India at least, there's a phenomena that the SIM is the name of, let's say, head of a family. Actual users are someone else. So we did something, of course, a lot of AI in it. We found that 45% of the SIMs are actually females, and the SIMs is in name of a male. So now that's the insight. Now how to monetize it? How do we make sure that now we give some offerings or we steer the customer towards a better use case and customer buys more and so on. So knowing my customers, again, another piece is finding what kind of cohort customer is in. So a particular behavior is shown by a set of customers. So how do we, decode that and then use AI for and use various kind of events and correlate them and then ultimately recognize that this guy needs this. For I'll tell you one example. In of course not Airtel's app, some other app. So in my app, I saw certain lesser discount. In my mother's app, the discount was showing more, and there were certain factors why this was happening. And I was using iPhone, and my mother was using some other phone, and so this is just one example, very simple example, but and then another one which is more like towards the network planning is how do I decide that where should I put a particular site? So typically, network planning or sales guys, marketing teams, they decide. But then, what is the right way, intelligent way to find out where should I put a tower? I should get the maximum ROI and maximum number of customers, ARPU, etc. Everything. So all those kinds of things. Again, if my customer is calling me, trying to connect with me, trying to interact with me, what is his intent? So like you also said that we know it. We know all the data. But what we have tried to do is actually derive intent. So if I know the intent, let's say customer is connecting on an IVR, and I know the intent beforehand, I'll be actually giving him some options in the first menu itself, which he is expecting. So this has resulted in a reduction of, reduction by 25% of average hold time of our calls and huge reduction in the cost of interacting with the customer. So that kind of thing. Again, customer is typing out something somewhere and we are trying to decipher what is his problem really, and maybe generate some ticket on his behalf because we know anyway what's happening in the back. Similarly, on the network SON side, there are a number of initiatives in terms of if suppose there's a weather ducting going on, shifting it, or traffic steering we talk about, and so on. So these are various use cases, and many of them have really provided a huge reduction in the cost. Or so sleeping cell was another thing where we could really recover almost hundreds of terabytes of data. So if suppose some cell is not functioning that optimally, and we find out intelligently that is not functioning that optimally, that means my customer is not able to consume data, right, and I'm losing revenue. So again, customer experience improves, revenue improves. So it's a win-win game. And so these are various use cases we have been experimenting with and really getting great experience for the customer as well as great revenue earning for our organization as well.
Right. Amit, I just want to quickly pick your brains also. How can one use AI in edge computing, given that 5G is here now, and like Dr. Mittal just said, there's so many use cases. How do you see that?
Yeah, so I think we the panelists have spoken about 5G in terms of how 5G is enabling new services,
Yeah.
right? And while that's happening, we're getting a lot of data getting generated. We have a lot of scale coming up in terms of the network. So I think what AI at Edge is going to do is that one, it will enable today that we can look at data at scale. We can analyze it on the fly in real time basis, right? And in that case, we can bring in analysis on the fly. So Dignesh spoke about the visual inspection use case, right? And I think that's something which we believe is going to scale across sectors. Whether it's going to be on the manufacturing shop floor, whether it's going to be even in the retail, right? So I think that's what is going to happen going forward. We believe that uh, 5G and edge infrastructure combined will actually make sure that we use AI to generate analysis on the fly. So that's going to be the case.
If I can bring in Mr. Shyam again, there are a lot of surveys that show that consumers are more likely to choose AI services from companies that use a framework that offers transparency on its data and their AI models. Can you share some principles that one should consider while building an AI model, since you had already spoken about how you've used AI anyway?
See, I think this is one of the most pungent questions which will hit most of us across industries going forward. So first and foremost, I think data privacy is one of the most important thing. In fact, Western countries have already created very clear DPDR rules. We are there in India writing such like things with our own understanding of how is the most efficacious way of driving this. So I think it all starts with, if my data is being used as an individual for any decision making or any recommendation, I would like to at least give some kind of direct or indirect consent to it. I think that's the most important thing. And the second part of it would come is, which is the agency which is actually using this kind of data, and what is my trust level with this kind of agency from their using this data transparently in a very integrated manner, rather than taking it for something else and using it for something else. And we have lawsuits all across the globe around this. So I think data privacy is one of the biggest thing. Second is, there's this concept about our ability to monetize, and when we are monetizing on something which we are using as raw material, then we owe it to the producer of the raw material to be a part of that value chain. And are we actually thinking about it, or we are somehow trying to get that data through some other means, because the data would automatically be detected by the systems he is using or devices he is using. But just because that data is getting kind of generated, do we not owe it to the customer to tell him this is how we use it and this is his part in the whole value chain? Would be the second part of it. And the last part of it is the integrity at which this data is being used. I mean, is it passed on to the right kind of further agencies, or is there a knockdown effect where it could be misused or mishandled or used for something else? So I think this whole closed looping of value chain on using the data becomes most important, and trust and faith is one of the biggest kind of levers here, which is going to become the pivot around which this whole data monetization thing is going to come.
Right. In fact, I would like to take this question back. Probably, Utkarsh, you could answer this. We were talking about cybersecurity a little earlier, right? And especially managing fraud. Where do you see the role of AI coming in to kind of manage fraud or cybersecurity, or try and stem it in the early stages itself?
So these are nation stages. We have just started looking into. Right?
Okay.
Cybersecurity is something which would be a bigger problem in the coming time, and with coupled with AI, because the thief is also inhibited.
He's also going to use it.
So it is a double-edged sword. So it is not just that we are after it. We also take care of the payment banks. We have got a big infrastructure. This is something we are building on. We have got the data analyzed. We have got the firewalls. So AI is something which will enable us understand that there is a breach. So I would not be able to comment further on this. Maybe Mr. Sudhir can add value to it.
So I'll just take one use case which we have implemented. There have been really mad rush of acquisitions and churning of the customers. It's a phenomena. Customer come, throw away, use the SIM, throw away the SIM, go to next, and so on. And lot of these acquisition processes are dependent on, let's say somebody has given Aadhaar as a document or whatever ID as a document. Now, the question is, how do we find out if that ID is a fraud, right? So now that is one of the big security risk, as well as it's a further a fraud, and we don't know how many such multiplier effect of fraud will come back. So what we did was, applied AI and tried to find out which all applications are actually fraud. So we were able to really recover about 30K to 40K, such cases which were kind of fraud. So that's a continuous happening case. So similarly, there are other initiatives wherein we are working on various security aspects and fraud aspects, and this is again a big opportunity because data tells you everything. It's a question of how do we interpret, how do we generate right knowledge out of that data. And as I told earlier, the challenge is real time, because otherwise the guy is going to run away. So real time, catch it, put the best algorithms, and find out the various possibilities of fraud or security breach which is happening.
And just to add on to some of that, just to give a perspective, is there are products that are working to have global repositories set up, because when there are frauds committed, generally what happens is a fraud committed in one country, a pattern of that is also comes up later somewhere else. So at least some of these are coming into play, which earlier was coming through bulletins and then implementations and then patches and so on. So now AI is playing a role in that, which is already in play. Obviously, certain things will evolve further as they go ahead, but those are already there in programs.
I mean, another thing when we're talking AI, we have to mention ChatGPT also. Right? I mean, we've all used it at some point or the other. I use ChatGPT almost every other day, because now I find it better than searching on Google, because it gives me relevant answers. Yeah. It's unfortunate that its data set is limited till 21 until they come up with a new data set. You won't get latest data on it. This is a question for the tech people in the room. Maybe Jignesh can take this. How do you see the role of ChatGPT being used in building solutions for customers?
We have seen the evolution of chatbots. Right?
Yeah.
All your customer calls that you used to make as a customer being analyzed, trying to find the context behind as to why the customer is calling, and the chatbot used to try and dissect as to why the customer is trying to call you. Is there a problem, which it used to pass on to your customer care agent, so that he could effectively address the customer's resolution, to act towards the resolution or solve that problem in a limited time frame, right? Now what ChatGPT is going to do is, it is going to go one step further in terms of addressing issues not only from a customer standpoint. So you could have a customer saying that, okay, ChatGPT, tell me how do I address this problem, and it would give you the list of actionable steps that you could do, instead of calling up a call center and wait for like that monologue that you have to wait for like 20 minutes, 15 minutes. So that is one aspect of the customer experience. The second side is from a operational standpoint, right? Today what happens is, you have your operational guys, you have your technology teams who are looking at manuals at your knowledge management centers in order to identify as to how to address or resolve a particular complaint. Now what ChatGPT can help you do is that you can just type in as to, I have a problem with this network connectivity. What are the 5 steps that I have to do? He need not have to go through the manuals which are stored somewhere else or in some repository or an online center and try to replicate those. All you have to do is just type in the problem statement, and it would throw in with a sequence of steps or an SOP that we call, in order to execute, right? So those are the things that will come up in the future. One step further is you could have voice assisted chat GPT that you just call up as a chat GPT on your mobile, and it gives you instructions as to what needs to be done. You need not even type it. What you're doing today is typing it, but you just apply what you call NLP at the top of it, and here you go. You just say, oh, I have a problem in this, and then it just resolves, gives you the resolution for that. So I think it's very much there. Within next 5 years, you will see voice enabled chat GPT out coming out.
Airtel or Jio, any examples that?
See, I would like to just put a bit of philosophy in it. See, typically the cycle is that we innovate and bring efficiencies, and then we see that these are not that much efficient and these are a bit inefficient. Then we automate, and then we increase efficiency and we innovate further. So now what is happening with ChatGPT is that even innovation or intelligence is getting automated. So, and these are the various patterns which an intelligent engine is providing you ready-made, and you put your use cases and intelligence over and above it. So that's where is the human mind is now working, and then people are wanting to use ready-made capsules of intelligence for different use cases. So obviously we have complex cases like NLPs and all, which have a lot of potential, and our teams are working. And it's not that I'm talking about a data set which is 2021 September, but actually it provides that you can add on to the data set and get learn more and add your use cases. But definitely very, very advanced use cases now are thinkable, because you don't have to spend your energy in those kind of capsules which are already available.
So to add to what Jignesh said, chat GPT or any kind of AI based chatbot, right? Once it is trained well, for customer service, it basically adds 2 points of value. One is consistency. So any call center today which is human operated, if I call at different time frames, I'll come across different agents and they will treat me differently. As against a AI based bot will treat me in a similar way, right? But at the same time might be customized to my problems, my needs, because it would know what has happened to me, what is my history in a better way. Second is the emotional factor. So wherever end of the day, howsoever hard you train the agents, they are human beings, right? So if a customer is really annoying them, eventually it would show in their voice, it would show in the kind of service that they would provide. But an AI bot to certain extent would be able to handle those emotions in a better way and kind of pacify the customer.
No, I just wanted to, there's always a hype cycle, and we are going through a major hype cycle. This was a natural evolution of search engines. It was supposed to happen. It took a little longer. I'm disappointed that Google didn't do it first because of that, dilemma. But I like to think of it as, earlier search was like a librarian who knew where the books were. And you could ask him what book you want, and you go pick the book and read it. Now you have a librarian who has read all the books, and therefore he can answer your question. You don't have to go to the book. It's a huge transition, and we are not realizing the power of it. In a way, sometimes I have sleepless nights, and I wonder if the collective intelligence of all humans have now been added into a single place called the internet, which is now massaged into a chat GPT, right? Now, but there are things to worry about, right? So one of them is ChatGPT is still a slave to the prompts. And today I saw a very nice meme. One guy said, "Hey, can you tell me the piracy sites in the world?" And the ChatGPT said, "No, you are not supposed to pirate, and bad thing, good thing." And then the same guy said, "Okay, tell me which sites I should not go to because they are, And then it gave the list, right? So it's all about prompt engineering, and humans are still smarter. But there are other things like, it is still making things up when it doesn't know. And it is not telling that I don't know, but I am able to make it up. And, that kind of worries me, that we don't know when it is right and when, because it's confident all the time. But when it is right and when it is wrong, we don't know. And this is a big problem, that you start trusting a system without knowing where it is right and wrong, right? And that quality is very important. Second is it is not contextual or personalized. So when a farmer is asking, I want to grow this crop, Kisan GPT has come. Unless the farmer puts, what is my soil type and what is the weather and all that, ChatGPT only knows the prompt. It doesn't know the context, let's say. It doesn't know the weather data, the satellite data, the soil IoT data, the other things that it needs to know to actually do a complete answer, which is personalized to that guy. So it is still a prompt-centric thing, not a personalized or a contextualized system. It is still language-centric and not knowledge-centric, and and it's still not actionable, only information-centric. So my worry is when I'm sure they are aware of all this and they will take care of all this. But when ChatGPT becomes actionable, that's when we should have more sleepless nights, right? It'll buy stuff that you don't even know that you need before you wake up and it's there at your doorstep, or weird things will happen, right? So we don't know where this is going. It's a very amazing technology, but we have to use it with a pinch of salt. And I think many countries are now worried about it. Many companies are worried about it, right? Amazon has banned the use of ChatGPT for code development and all that, because we don't know what the boundary between privacy and, especially enterprise privacy and once it is in there, see, when you put something on the website, you can always remove it. So Google search doesn't know. But once you have asked a question on the prompt and copy pasted a piece of code, you cannot remove it anymore. Even the AI guys, OpenAI guys cannot remove it because they don't know what weights it has affected in the network. So it's a very one-way street. We will learn, we'll make some mistakes and learn how much to trust, where to use it really well, where not to use it. And in the, I call it, the BC, the definition of BC, right? Before Christ, before COVID, and now before ChatGPT, right? And we are going to go through this transition that I was talking to academicians and they were wondering, should we teach coding skills to our students anymore, math skills to our students anymore? Because everything ChatGPT will do. So I think it's a big transformation of mankind that will happen. Good or bad, we'll find out. But when people got Google Maps, we lost a sense of direction. Nobody knows where is north anymore, right? Or you cannot tell sense of direction. When we got calculator, we don't know how to do math in the mind anymore. Now we are not going to know how to write language properly because we won't need to, because, student homework. So I think there are pros and cons to every technology. We have to take it with a pinch of salt, but it's very amazing if the right use cases emerge and we develop confidence in it, then it's going to transform many, many sectors and take away many, many jobs, I'm sure. And new jobs will come, hopefully.
Yeah. So actually, this is a story I heard from the Microsoft guys. ChatGPT started by the team and no one was using it. So one thing to learn from them, they said, why don't we make it so that it's public and it's a more a conversational thing. People want to converse. People are so alone today because of what we all talked about, thanks to all of us. So that's what picked up for ChatGPT. That's why they had only trained till 21, right? Now what happened with that, there's no bias on it, what Shailesh was talking about. So one thing what we can learn from that is, how can we make it so conversational in our day-to-day enterprise life, which will make our customers interested in what we do. That's one. What we can do is take that methodology, how they are doing it, and bring it in-house. So the security boundaries are created around it. The data fed to it is more, curated. It's more real, so that whatever it gives out, right, it can be used. It's not biased. So these two areas, if we can walk through and we can make it, right, I think ChatGPT would be a great tool internally within the organizations, within their security realms, to bring value to the customers.
No, I think that makes sense, I said, really. Because I think ChatGPT, in my view also, when it comes to an enterprise use case, right, it has to behave very differently from what it is doing right now, right? Because when you're talking about generative AI coming and replacing an agent, a customer agent, right, the context has to be very different. The context has to be specific to the business you are in, the problem you are solving for your customers, right? So in that case, it has to evolve in a different way.
Talking about AI, how do you see AI helping in a sustainable transformation in the telecom space? For example, you were talking about where you find a weak cell and improve it in real time. So how do you see AI playing a role in your network? And then I'll take the same thing to you as well.
See, if our basic premises of thinking is right, then it is going to sustain and flourish. And in Airtel, our premise is always customer backed. So customer is first, customer obsessed, and how it is going to help to my customer. So if we continuously think over that, then whether you talk about the various services customer is consuming, or he is trying to get a particular experience, or my network optimization, or whatever, all of these naturally come up with various kinds of use cases. So at Airtel, what we do is maybe brainstorm on customer, and then see, as I said, growth, experience, churn reduction, optimization, and all of this from the customer angle. And that's how it is going to sustain. Anyway, technologies are increasing, and the standards, what used to be in maybe 2G were different, 3G, and then 4G, and now 5G is talking about all API based and all that. So now the challenges of newer technologies definitely bring newer opportunities for the intelligence. So as I was talking about the enterprise use case and talk about the slicing, that's again an area where you do slice management and put some great intelligence and provide very, very advanced use cases for the applications. So these are again some potential use cases, although just brainstorm and you will find actually many.
So Shyam, I think I'll take the last question to you on the same thing. How is AI driving a sustainable transformation in telecom? How do you see it?
Yeah, I think both Raghu and Shailesh made a very pertinent point. It is so, and I will use the same example of the librarian who has read all the books. So if I have a tool which has read all the books and I need to refer and I need to use it to do my things faster, more effectively, towards enhancing the service levels I am providing, towards delighting the customers the way I am delighting, it will always be faster, much more efficient, much more data backed, and much more sharper. This is only going to evolve on its own. So I think it would be sooner than later become a very important way of life. It is as simple as that.
Any quick closing comments anyone has? Others will
Yeah, just quickly, I think platformization is the right keyword to describe, where we don't think of AI as a separate part and IT and infrastructure as a separate part, right? I think if we are integrating it, like the human body, right, we have everything integrated into a single whole. So we don't talk about AI as something special. It is inbuilt, it is part of the system. And a long time ago, somebody gave a definition of AI and he said, if it works, it's not AI anymore, right? So ChatGPT is not AI anymore or something, right? So I think such an integration, which is not happening as an afterthought, but as a pre-thought when we build new systems. We think AI first systems from the get-go, and that will increase the adoption of AI. Today what we do, we build a system separately in terms of workflow, business, processes, all that. Then we say, okay, now we'll take 1 year, 2 years to collect some data, right or wrong, and then we'll bring the AI guys, right? And that has to shift now, right? Java guys are, and AI guys should come on the day one. And that will change the mindset of how we build next generation systems, smart cities and all that. And how do we platformize and integrate everything so it doesn't look like a separate thing. I think those will change the way we think about AI in the future.
Okay. Sumana, if you'd like to summarize our discussion for today.
That was an absolutely insightful session. Each point kind of brought to light a lot of us who are probably using technology, telecom and technology together. But, so the telecom industry is no doubt at an inflection point, and AI, if we can say, is enabling optimizing that experience. So often, as we can see, for the telecom industry, AI is like a tool that is helping stay ahead of the curve. And if I can quote what Jignesh said, that AI is going to harness the true potential of 5G. So, and enabling a better experience, a broader expanded reach. So that is perhaps the crux of where AI and telecom is there today. And the future is there for all of us to kind of see and experience. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you, esteemed panel people out of here. Thank you very much for the exciting and insightful session that we had over this discussion. I will leave it out to Sumana to give a vote of thanks and a closing note in that context before we wrap up this thing for a networking dinner from your own.
Big thank you to all of you, and from Financial Express Online today. It's one of the raging topics of tech, how we are marrying technology or AI in the evolution of telecom. And I think some very crucial and the crux of the evolution came through during our discussion. And when we are looking at this journey, a special thanks to IBM too for the association and for bringing in key inputs in this, because it's like two parallel lines that are now gradually merging, both technology and telecom. So a big thanks to all of you here. Thank you so much.